The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday, sandwiched between a cable bill and a takeout menu from the new Thai place down the street. Marcus Alvarez might have missed it entirely if not for the bold Homeowners Association notice of violation stamped across the envelope in aggressive red letters. He sighed, set down his coffee mug, and tore open the envelope with the resignation of a man who'd been through this particular rodeo before. "Unbelievable," he muttered, scanning the formal notice. According to one Brenda Whitfield, HOA board president, the structure in his backyard was an unsightly and unauthorized addition that violated community guidelines, Section 8, Paragraph 4, no outbuildings, sheds, or similar structures without prior written approval. He had exactly 14 days to remove it or face daily fines of $150. Marcus glanced out his kitchen window at the supposed eyesore, a reinforced concrete and steel safe room disguised as an ordinary garden shed installed just last month after 3 years of paperwork, engineering assessments, and bureaucratic hoop jumping to get FEMA approval. Living in Tornado Alley meant preparing for the worst, especially after the F4 twister that had leveled half his childhood home in Oklahoma. The shed had cost him nearly $30,000 and was literally bolted into a concrete foundation that extended 6 feet underground. His phone buzzed with a text from his next-door neighbor, Amir. Asterisk, if you get one too. Emergency HOA meeting tonight about unauthorized structures. I think Hurricane Brenda is on the warpath again, asterisk. Marcus typed back, asterisk, just got the letter. This should be fun, asterisk. Amir's reply was immediate, asterisk, my money's on you. Bring popcorn, asterisk. That evening, Marcus parked his Weatherford pickup in the Oak Ridge Community Center lot already crowded with luxury SUVs and German sit-ins. He grabbed his folder of documents and headed inside, where 30 or so of his neighbors sat in uncomfortable folding chairs arranged in a semicircle before the HOA board's table. Brenda Whitfield sat center stage, her platinum blonde bob immaculate, reading glasses perched on her nose, shuffling papers with practiced efficiency. Marcus slipped into an empty seat beside Amir, who passed him a coffee cup with what definitely wasn't coffee inside. "Liquid courage," Amir whispered. She's already been on a 20-minute rant about property values and neighborhood character. Brenda's gaze locked onto Marcus the moment he sat down. "Ah, Mr. Alvarez has decided to join us. Excellent timing. We were just discussing your structure." Marcus nodded politely. "Happy to be here, Brenda." "That's Mrs. Whitfield, if you please," she corrected, voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Now, as I was explaining to the board, we've had numerous complaints about unauthorized sheds appearing in several backyards. Most egregious is the one at 1422 Oak Ridge Lane." She directed her pointer at a photo of Marcus's safe room projected on the wall. "That's a clear violation of our covenant," continued Brenda, tapping her French manicured nails against the table. "It's visible from the golf course and has already generated complaints from members of the country club. The property value impact alone." "Excuse me," Marcus interjected, raising his hand like a schoolboy. "May I address the board?" Brenda's mouth tightened into a thin line. "We typically hear resident concerns after the board's presentation, but I suppose we can make an exception." She glanced at her watch. "You have 2 minutes." Marcus stood, folder in hand. "Thanks, Brenda. Sorry, Mrs. Whitfield. I understand the concern, but what you're calling a shed is actually a FEMA-approved storm shelter installed with county permits and designed to withstand an F5 tornado." The room stirred with interest. Marcus cleared his throat, suddenly aware that every eye was on him. "After last year's close call with that twister that hit Redwood County, I decided it was time to be prepared. Not just for me, but for any neighbors who might need shelter in an emergency." Brenda's expression hardened. "Permits or not, Mr. Alvarez, you still needed HOA approval, which you failed to obtain." Marcus smiled and opened his folder. "Actually, I have something here you might want to see." The community center air conditioner hummed in the background as Marcus pulled out a stack of papers from his folder. He handed the first document to Brenda, who accepted it with visible reluctance. "This is my application for HOA approval, submitted electronically 8 months ago," Marcus explained, his voice steady. "You'll see it includes detailed blueprints, materials list, and a rendering of the finished structure. If you check the timestamp and delivery receipt, you'll note it was sent to board at oakridgeho.org on September 12th of last year." Murmurs rippled through the room as Marcus handed copies to the other board members. "I never received this," Brenda insisted, her face flushing slightly as she skimmed the document. "Page 2 includes the automated response from the HOA email system confirming receipt," Marcus continued. "And page 3 shows a follow-up email I sent after 30 days of no response as per the HOA bylaws, which state that applications not explicitly denied within 30 days are considered provisionally approved." The board secretary, a retired accountant named Walter, adjusted his glasses as he examined the paperwork. He'd read about the bylaws Brenda, Section 5, subsection C. Brenda's posture stiffened. Provisional approval is not final approval. Which is why I also have this, Marcus said, extracting another document. This is the certified letter I sent to the board after 60 days of no response, stating my intention to proceed based on the provisional approval clause. According to the delivery confirmation, it was signed for by you personally, Mrs. Whitfield. The room grew uncomfortably quiet. One of the newer board members, a young woman named Jasmine who worked as a corporate attorney, leaned forward with interest. Mr. Alvarez appears to have followed proper procedure, Jasmine observed. I move that we consider this matter resolved and procedure isn't the only issue here. Brenda interrupted, her voice sharpening. The structure itself violates our aesthetic guidelines. It's an eyesore that impacts the entire community. Marcus had anticipated this objection. He pulled out his tablet and connected it to the projector, replacing Brenda's unflattering photo of his shelter with a series of professional images. These are the actual photos from 3 different angles, he explained. As you can see, the shelter matches my home's exterior exactly. Same paint color, same trim style, same architectural details. I specifically designed it to be as unobtrusive as possible. He clicked to the next slide, showing a row of backyard structures along the golf course. And here are photos of board members' properties taken yesterday. Mrs. Whitfield's gazebo, Mr. Peterson's pool house, and Mrs. Donovan's greenhouse, all larger than my shelter and all visible from the golf course. A woman in the back of the room stifled a laugh. Brenda's face had turned the approximate shade of a tomato. That's completely different, she sputtered. Is it? Marcus asked mildly, because according to HOA records, which are public, by the way, none of these structures received formal board approval either. They were all built under the same provisional approval clause I used. Walter cleared his throat uncomfortably. He's got us there, Brenda. But Brenda Whitfield hadn't become HOA president by backing down easily. She shuffled through her papers and produced a different document with a triumphant flourish. This is irrelevant, she declared. The covenant specifically prohibits structures primarily designed for storage or utility purposes. Safety features or not, your bunker clearly falls into that category. Marcus smiled. This was exactly the opening he'd been waiting for. That's where you're wrong, Mrs. Whitfield. My storm shelter isn't classified as a storage or utility structure. It's officially designated as a life safety installation under both county building codes and FEMA guidelines. He handed out his final document, an official letter from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, complete with government seals and signatures. This confirms that my shelter meets FEMA P361 standards for community storm shelters and is registered in the National Storm Shelter Registry. More importantly, he continued, his voice taking on an edge of satisfaction, federal disaster preparedness regulations specifically exempt FEMA-approved shelters from HOA restrictions when those restrictions would prevent reasonable safety measures. 3 days after the HOA meeting, Marcus awoke to the sound of someone pounding on his front door. Bleary-eyed and still in his pajamas, he stumbled through the house, wondering who could be so insistent at 7:15 on a Saturday morning. He opened the door to find a heavy-set man in khakis and a polo shirt emblazoned with Oak Ridge Country Club maintenance supervisor. Behind him, standing with arms crossed and a barely concealed smirk, was Brenda Whitfield. Mr. Alvarez, the man began, consulting a clipboard. I'm Tom Burnside from the country club. We need to discuss your backyard. Marcus rubbed his eyes. My backyard? What about it? It appears your structure is causing drainage issues on the 14th fairway. Water has been pooling, and the club manager believes it's due to changes in the water caused by your construction. Before Marcus could respond, Brenda stepped forward, her voice dripping with false concern. As HOA president, I'm obligated to accompany maintenance staff on official neighborhood business. This is quite serious, Marcus. The country club could sue both you and the association. Marcus leaned against the doorframe, suddenly understanding. Is that right? And when exactly did this drainage problem start? Tom consulted his clipboard again. First reported yesterday afternoon. Interesting, Marcus replied. Especially since we haven't had rain in over 2 weeks. Tom shifted uncomfortably. Well, they've been running the sprinklers heavily, and somehow my shelter, which has been fully completed for 3 weeks, only started causing problems after the HOA meeting. Marcus finished for him. Brenda's smile tightened. The issues can take time to manifest. Marcus sighed, give me 15 minutes to get dressed, and I'll meet you in the backyard. While changing, Marcus sent a quick text to Amir. Round 2 with Hurricane Brenda. Country club drainage complaint. Amir's response was immediate. On my way, bringing reinforcements. By the time Marcus stepped into his backyard, Brenda was already there with Tom, pointing dramatically at the shelter. To his surprise, Amir had indeed arrived, accompanied by Jasmine from the HOA board and an older gentleman Marcus recognized as Dr. Ramirez, a retired civil engineer who lived at the end of the street. "Hope you don't mind the intrusion," Amir called out cheerfully. "I mentioned the situation to a few neighbors on our morning walk." Brenda's expression suggested she minded very much indeed. Dr. Ramirez approached the shelter, examining the ground around it with professional interest. "Interesting complaint. Mind if I take a look at the supposed problem area on the golf course?" Tom hesitated, glancing at Brenda, who gave a stiff nod. The small group followed the maintenance supervisor through the narrow stretch of trees separating Marcus' property from the golf course. Sure enough, a muddy depression had formed on the edge of the fairway, about 20 yards from the property line. Dr. Ramirez knelt beside the puddle, completely unconcerned about his immaculate chakis. He dug his fingers into the mud, sniffed it, and then stood up, brushing his hands together. "This isn't natural water accumulation," he announced. "Someone deliberately created this puddle." "That's ridiculous," Brenda sputtered. "Why would anyone?" "The soil has been deliberately compacted and shaped to form a basin," Dr. Ramirez continued, "and there are traces of dish soap in the water. A common trick to make temporary puddles last longer by reducing surface tension." Tom's face had gone pale. I was just told to document the problem. I don't know anything about." "And if you check the natural watershed," Jasmine interjected, pointing to the gentle slope of the land, "water from Marcus' property would flow in that direction, away from this location." Basic topography. Brenda's face had turned an alarming shade of purple. "This is absurd. You're all conspiring against me." "Against you," Marcus echoed. "I thought this was about the country club's complaint." Jasmine pulled out her phone. "As an HOA board member, I should document this situation. Mind if I record?" Brenda took a step back. "This meeting is over." "Tom, we're leaving." "Actually," Marcus said, his voice hardening, "I think we need to discuss this further. Falsifying property damage claims is fraud, Mrs. Whitfield, and dragging the country club into a personal vendetta could expose both you and the HOA to liability." Tom looked as though he wanted to sink into the ground alongside the fake puddle. "I was just following instructions." "Mr. Chambers, the club manager, said Mrs. Whitfield reported the issue and we needed to document it." Brenda's carefully constructed facade cracked. "You have no proof of anything. This is all circumstantial, and I won't stand here and be accused by an engineer and his friends playing detective." The campaign for HOA presidency began in earnest the following week. Marcus had never imagined himself in any political role, even one as modest as Homeowners Association president, but he found himself swept up in a neighborhood movement that had clearly been simmering beneath the surface for years. His first campaign meeting was held in the Wilsons' living room, where 15 neighbors crowded on the floral-patterned furniture to discuss strategy. Mr. Wilson, a retired high school principal with a booming voice that needed no microphone, took charge of the gathering. "Folks, we've all suffered under Brenda's reign long enough," he announced, leaning on his cane for emphasis. "Marcus here is our best shot at restoring sanity to this neighborhood." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I appreciate the confidence, but I've never done anything like this. I designed storm shelters and drainage systems. I don't know the first thing about running an HOA." "That's exactly why you're perfect," Jasmine interjected. "You understand rules and regulations, you're methodical, and most importantly, you're not power-hungry." "Plus," Amir added with a grin, "you've already beaten her twice. You're basically her kryptonite." Mrs. Wilson passed around homemade lemonade and cookies while the group discussed campaign basics. Door-to-door visits, a simple flyer highlighting Marcus's qualifications, and a meet-and-greet barbecue at the community park. The enthusiasm in the room was palpable and slightly overwhelming. "Don't look so terrified," Dr. Ramirez told Marcus as the meeting wound down. "Brenda won the last election with just 27 votes. Most people don't bother to show up for these things." "Then why go through all this?" Marcus asked. "Because this time, Brenda's worried, and when Brenda's worried, she fights dirty." As if on cue, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your email." "Thought you should see this before it goes out. Tom from maintenance." The email Tom had forwarded contained a draft newsletter from Brenda to all Oak Ridge residents. Under the innocuous heading "Safety Concerns," she had written, "Recent events have raised serious questions about certain residents using unverified safety claims to circumvent our community standards. While the board respects genuine safety measures, we must be vigilant against those exploiting loopholes for personal convenience or, worse, commercial purposes. Reports suggest one such shelter may actually be used for operating an unlicensed business. The board is investigating and will take appropriate action." Marcus stared at his phone in disbelief. "She's implying I'm running a business out of my storm shelter. That's absurd." "What did I tell you?" Dr. Ramirez sighed. Fighting dirty. The newsletter was just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus discovered that campaigning for HOA president was bizarrely similar to a miniature version of national politics. Brenda's tactics ranged from petty to outrageous. She scheduled mandatory landscaping inspections for every household that displayed one of Marcus's campaign signs. She circulated anonymous concerns about his shelter being used for everything from illegal gambling to storing hazardous materials. She even attempted to change the election bylaws to require candidates to have served on a committee first, a rule change that would have disqualified Marcus, only to be blocked by the other board members. But for every underhanded move Brenda made, Marcus's support seemed to grow. Neighbors who had previously kept their heads down during HOA disputes began to speak up, sharing their own stories of Brenda's overreach. The young couple who had been fined for having a small vegetable garden in their backyard. The single mother who had received violation notices for letting her children's toys remain in the yard overnight. The retired veteran who had fought a 6-month battle to keep his modest flag display. Each story reinforced what Marcus was beginning to understand. Brenda's crusade against his storm shelter wasn't about the structure itself. It was about control. 3 days before the election, Marcus stood in his driveway chatting with Amber when a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up to the curb. A middle-aged man in an expensive suit stepped out, his demeanor screaming government official. "Marcus Alvarez?" the man asked, approaching with a leather portfolio tucked under his arm. Marcus nodded cautiously. "That's me. I'm Richard Keller, county inspector. We've received a complaint about an unauthorized commercial structure on your property." Amir muttered something under his breath that sounded distinctly unprintable. "Commercial structure?" Marcus echoed. "You mean my storm shelter? It's fully permitted and FEMA-approved." Keller consulted his paperwork. "The complaint alleges you're operating an insurance." Marcus barely slept that night. By dawn, he had already called Jasmine, Dr. Ramirez, and Amir, explaining the situation and formulating a plan. As an attorney, Jasmine was particularly incensed by Brenda's latest scheme. Falsifying utility documents for illegal proceedings is a criminal offense, she explained, her voice tense even over the phone. This goes way beyond HOA pettiness. By 8 o'clock, Marcus's kitchen had become an impromptu war room. Jasmine arrived with legal paperwork and a grim expression. Dr. Ramirez brought topographical surveys of the entire subdivision from his days on the original development team. Amir's contribution was coffee, donuts, and moral support. "According to Tom, Brenda's hearing is scheduled for 10 this morning," Marcus explained, spreading out the genuine utility maps from the flash drive. "Judge Caldwell, who apparently plays golf with Brenda's husband every Sunday." Jasmine's fingers flew over her laptop keyboard. "I filed an emergency motion for a continuance, but getting it before a different judge on such short notice is a long shot. We need a more direct approach," Dr. Ramirez suggested, "something that exposes the fraud immediately in a way the judge can ignore." Their planning was interrupted by an urgent knock at the door. Amir peered through the front window, then swore under his breath. "It's Tom. He looks terrified." Marcus opened the door to find the maintenance supervisor sweating profusely despite the morning chill. "They know," Tom gasped. "Someone saw us meeting last night. Brenda's accelerated everything. The utility crew is on their way right now. They're going to discover the water line issue and get an emergency work order instead of waiting for the hearing." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "How soon?" 20 minutes, maybe less. I drove straight here when I heard." The group exchanged alarmed looks. Their carefully developed legal strategy had just become irrelevant. "We need to document the actual underground conditions before they start digging," Dr. Ramirez said decisively. "If they're planning to plant evidence, we need proof of what's really there." "I've got ground-penetrating radar equipment in my truck," Marcus replied. "Part of my regular kit for shelter installations. And I've got a drone with thermal imaging," Amir added. When everyone looked at him in surprise, he shrugged. "Photography hobby. The thermal camera shows underground water lines really well. Temperature differential." "Perfect," Jasmine said, already gathering her papers. "I'll notify the county inspector from yesterday. He should witness this too." What followed was a frantic race against time. While Jasmine made calls, Marcus and Dr. Ramirez performed an emergency scan of the ground around the shelter, carefully documenting the complete absence of any water line. Amir's drone buzzed overhead, capturing thermal imagery that clearly showed the actual path of the irrigation line, exactly where Tom had indicated, nowhere near Marcus's shelter. They had barely finished when a convoy of vehicles turned onto Marcus's street, a utility truck, Brenda's luxury SUV, and ominously, a small excavator on a trailer. Marcus stepped into his front yard to meet them, trying to project a calm he didn't feel. Behind him, Dr. Ramirez set up a tripod with a video camera while Amir continued to pilot his drone. Brenda emerged from her SUV wearing designer gardening clothes and a determined expression. Behind her, two men in country club maintenance uniforms looked distinctly uncomfortable. "Mr. Alvarez," she called out, her voice artificially pleasant. "We discovered an urgent infrastructure issue that needs immediate attention. There's a main water line running directly under your structure. I'm afraid we'll need to access it immediately." "That's interesting," Marcus replied evenly, "especially since we just completed a comprehensive ground scan showing there's no water line anywhere near my shelter." Brenda's smile didn't waver. "Our utility maps clearly show otherwise." "Your falsified utility maps, you mean?" Marcus countered, holding up a tablet displaying the actual plans. "We have the original documentation right here showing the line runs 30 yards east." For the first time, Brenda's composure slipped. "Those could be anything." "Our current plans,"